Hello and welcome back. Welcome to Peak Flicks Reading and Writing with the one and only Miss Holloman. Are you ready? Are you ready for an excellent day of teaching and learning? I am so happy to be with you today. It's an exciting day. We're on our 9th day together. Can you believe it, scholars? Our mentor text. As you already know, we've been learning about whales and we've been learning some important facts about whales, and we will continue with this text. Now, scholars, our reading objective. I can infer the importance of a nonfiction book. Making inferences. Well, first of all, scholars, when we make inferences, we use clues from the text and we use our prior knowledge, which is schema in inference. Our inferences help us understand the text. So, scholars, I want to share an example with you. Well, first of all, before I get to our example, today, scholars, we will infer the importance of a nonfiction text. If someone is smiling, scholars, you can infer that she's happy. If someone is crying, scholars, what can you infer? You're right, that the person is sad. If someone is yawning, what can you infer? That the person is probably sleepy. So sometimes an author wants the reader to infer, and they don't always tell us the information, but we have to use the clues in the text. We have to use our background knowledge, and that helps us infer. So, scholars here, as you know, in a nonfiction text, we usually have something called a table of contents, and that gives us a heading with a number. And if we turn to that page, if we turn to page 4, we know On the Move will be there. So, we're actually on page 4, On the Move. Now, scholars, we've read this book before, so we're not going to read the whole entire text again. But what we will do, scholars, is that we will look at certain pages and we will try to use the information and our background knowledge to infer. So on this page, it says when animals travel from one region or habitat to another, it is called what? Migration. You got it. Animals migrate in search of what? Food or mate. Migration helps animals survive on Earth. Many animals migrate. The sperm whale is one of them. So, scholars, guess what? On this page, what can we infer? Well, one thing I know that we can infer is that traveling is important to the sperm whale, and food is important to the sperm whale. And finding a mate is important because finding a mate helps the sperm whale reproduce and have baby whales. So we can infer that traveling is important. We can infer that finding food is important. And we can also infer that finding a mate is important to sperm whales. On this page, they talk about migration, and we've learned that when we migrate, you move from one region or habitat to another. Mate, either a male or female in a pair. Most animals need a mate to have what? To have babies. Now, scholars, on this page, we can look at this page and we can infer that a whale is huge because the author compares the sperm whale to a bus. So we can infer that a whale is large or huge. Or another synonym for that is enormous. On this page, we learned about the wondrous whales. Sperm whales are amazing creatures. They are the largest toothed predator on the planet. Male whales are larger than female whales, and males weigh up to 50 pounds and grow up to 60 feet long. They're not just big, but they are huge. So on this page, scholars, just looking at the picture, we already learned that he's huge because the author compares the sperm whale to a bus, but also we know that the sperm whale's body is shaped very differently. And we can infer that just by looking at it, but also the author gives us some information about the sperm whale's head. And so we can infer that this sperm whale has such a large body, but we also can infer that there's one part of the sperm's whale that is extremely large. And we know because the author tells us about the head. Okay? On this page, it says sperm whales get their name from a waxy material in their heads, right? So, scholars, one of the things that we've learned is that whales have a very special oil, and we know that they have that oil, but also we can infer that that oil was very important to humans because we know that whales were being killed just so people could get the oil because they wanted to make cosmetics, they wanted to make creams, and they wanted to make candles. And we also know that wasn't very fair to whales, but we can infer that their oil was very important to humans. Here, scholars, on this page, the author gives us like a diagram. And we can infer that the reason why the author wants us to have this diagram is because the author labels different parts of the whale, and he or she, and we know it's a she, Laura, the author of this text, wants us to know the importance of each part. So we can infer that she's using this diagram to educate us as readers on different parts. So skin, and she has skin in bold letters, so that's important. So we can infer that's important. Dark gray or black and wrinkle, like a plume. So she wants us to know the importance. And then she's pointing to it. So we can infer that she wants us to know this is important information she wants us to know. On this page, need to lead. Female sperm whales travel in family groups called pods. There are 15 to 20 females and their young in a pod. Pods are led by an older female. She guides the whales to the best feeding ground. Males usually lead their pods when they are between 4 and 21 years old. Then they join bachelor groups up to 50 males. The largest and the oldest male tends to swim alone. So, one of the things, scholars, that we can infer is that female whales and male whales have different roles, but they're both important. And that it's important to know that even though one's a female and one's a male, they're both important, but they do different things. So we can infer that. Here, the author talks about the importance of being in a pod. And we've learned from this author that whales travel together. And here we can infer that taking care of each other is a priority, which means a priority means it's important, just like it's important for us to take care of each other. Here, scholars, we can infer that the author has very important information she wants us to know about. So she's using a map to explain it in a visual way. And she has arrows moving in different, it's in a red color and moving up and down so we can have a clear understanding of what she's talking about. So we can infer when she's using a map that she really wants us to have a clear visual of what she's talking about. What a feast. Sperm whales eat a lot. 1 ton of food every day. That's 2,000 pounds. And like we said before, we know that food is important to a whale. We also know that a whale can eat a variety of things. They can eat sharks, they can eat octopus, and we know that they eat fish. But food is important because on a lot of the pages, we see the author making reference to finding food. Now, scholars, we also know that swimming is very important to whales. Any animal that lives in the sea, right? So they are extremely talented and they're divers. So swim is an important piece of what a whale does. They wouldn't be able to survive if they could not swim. On this page, during an average dive, a sperm whale holds their breath for about 45 minutes. Now, when you think about 45 minutes, that's about as long as you go to a special. So think about gym, because usually when you go to gym, it's 40 minutes. And so a sperm whale can hold its breath for 45 minutes. Can you picture that? So the author wants us to know just how well this sperm whale can hold their breath, because as humans, we cannot do that. So think about being in gym. Think about the sperm whale holding its breath and how that's important information. And we can infer that being able to hold your breath is important in a whale's life because they spend a lot of time underwater. So, scholars, it says we whales. Whales are mammals, and baby whales are born live and drink what? They drink milk. And for the first 2 years or so of the young, let me read that again. It says whales are mammals. Baby mammals are born live and drink their mother's milk for the first 2 years or so of life. Young whales are called calves. So we can infer that it's important for the baby whale to be around its mom when it's born, because we know that the baby whale gets milk from its mom. And I have a connection, text to self, because usually when a mom has a new baby, the mom makes sure she takes really good care of her baby, a human baby, and makes sure the baby gets milk and everything that the baby needs. So we can infer that it's important for the baby whale to stay close to the mom so they can get the milk and also be protected. So On this page, they talk about how the calves are born tail first and take their first breath within seconds of being born. And we know that swimming is important because the author tells us that they learn to swim 30 minutes. And we know that if you are an animal that lives in the sea, you have to know how to swim. So we can infer that swimming is extremely important. Here, scholars, one thing that you can infer is that the author wants you to know important information. The author has it labeled, they have a picture, and also the author has 10 cool things about sperm whales. So we can infer that the author wants to give you more information. We also know that sperm whales talk and they make a sound, which is important. That's the way they communicate. And we know that when they make this sound, they find their way in the deep, dark ocean. They want to locate food. And as we continue to read, we see how food keeps coming up. And they also find their young. So we can infer that the baby whales are extremely important. So here, deadly dangers. A giant squid might be a sperm's whale's favorite meal, but it also can be a whale's worst enemy. So we know that we've learned about how a a giant squid will protect itself, right? So we can infer that a giant squid is no one to play with. I wouldn't play with them. Now, scholars, we can also infer on this page that it was a time, it's a time now for us to really protect whales and make sure that we take care of whales, our sea animals, because the author tells us that there was a time when people would kill whales and get that oil that they wanted from them. And that, so it's important for us to not harm our sea animals, especially whales. And we can infer that it's important for us as citizens to keep our planet clean, not to litter. Things are getting better, and the author shares with us that organizations are willing to stop oil spills and other pollutions in the ocean. People are using fewer plastic bags that may end up in the ocean and hurt our sea animals. So we can infer here that it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to be responsible and make sure that we're not polluting the ocean. So here, scholars, we can also infer that the author wants us to do more. The author wants you to do research. So they left websites here for you and your mom and your dad to look up to see what we can do to preserve our sperm whales. So here, scholars, the author provided a glossary. A glossary is very important. It gives us pictures and it gives us important words. And we also have an index. As you already know, if you go to the word pod and you turn to page 16, 19, and 33, what word would you find? You got it, pod. So scholars, I really hope you understand that in order to infer, we can use clues from the text, we can use our background knowledge, and then we put it together and we can infer. And sometimes when we infer, it's not always stated in the text. So now, scholars, I want you to pause this video. I need you to go get your book baggie, get your pencil, get your writing journal, and I need you to come back in what? You got it, scholars. 5 minutes. I'll see you in 5. Great, you're back. So now, scholars, let's move into, we're transitioning into writing. Writing objective. I can add clues in my writing so the reader can make inferences when he or she reads my story. So if you look at our anchor chart, it says inference. Authors don't always tell their reader everything, okay? And again, if you look at our anchor chart, we can see text clues, background knowledge. We have our text clues, we have our background knowledge, we put it together and we use, that's how you make an inference. And remember, in our example before, if you see somebody happy, you can infer that. If you see, let me fix that. If you see someone smiling, cheese, you can infer that the person is happy. If you see somebody crying, you can infer that the person is sad. If you see somebody, you can infer that the person is tired. So now, scholars, I want you to be creative with your writing, and I want you to add at least one thing that the I want you to add something in your writing that you're going to make your reader infer. You're not going to actually just tell them, but they're going to be able to use the text clues and the background knowledge to help them. Today, scholars, we will add clues in my writing let me read that over. I can add clues in my writing so the reader can make inferences when he or she reads my story. And again, you can look at the anchor chart to help you, text clues, background knowledge, and then how you come up with your inference. So now let me think of a topic I want to write about. So, scholars, we've been exploring, we've been learning about whales. You have the text, I have the text. Also, or you had an opportunity to write, you have the opportunity to write about another nonfiction book. Okay. But first of all, you have to think about, what are you writing about? That's number one. Number two, what do I want the reader to infer? And you can use the anchor chart to help you, to give you clues on how you're going to set it up. Okay? Great. So now, scholars, I want you to get ready to be the best writers that you can be. I want you to remember that you were born for what? Greatness, and no one can steal your dreams. And I want you to have a great day of teaching and learning. So, writers, off you go. Bye. See you next time.